Hey everybody, welcome to the Let's Talk Student Ministry podcast. My name is Noah Bello. I am the student pastor of Tesh Baptist Church.
And I'm Nikki Lee. I'm a youth leader here at Tesh Baptist Church.
And what a month we've had.
What a week we've had.
What a week we've had.
Yeah.
It's been a while since we actually met. I know that in the posting schedule you're going to see there's only 1 week missed, but I think we haven't filmed in like 2 weeks now.
Yeah.
I think. Mm-hmm. And you see, like, the way that our lives work, because of how busy things get, a week feels like more than a week for me.
It feels like I haven't been here in like a month.
Yeah, like in just this past week, just in my life in this past week, I had some car trouble happen, which made it hard for me to drive, and then I had to spend a lot of money to get it fixed. I have to spend a lot of money. Insurance is just being difficult right now. And then there was some situations that happened with Celebrate Recovery and with other ministries that just made things more difficult. And obviously planning a wedding is never fun. And so it's very nice.
I guess that depends on who you ask. If you're planning a wedding is fun. Yeah, but I understand. I get it, because my last 2 weeks, I was supposed to go on this 11-day dream vacation to Disney and Universal. And we got there, we had 1 day in the parks, and then my mom went in the hospital from Friday until Tuesday night. And so it was a very different experience and trip than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, and we were really worried about you over here. There's a couple times we were in the office and just talking about, like, everybody, we need to pray for Nikki, and like, there's a lot going on over it was all the way in Orlando when that was happening too.
Yeah, that was hard, that we were so far away from home, and it was just me and Daryl, and we didn't get a lot of sleep. But I definitely felt the love from everybody. You were texting me daily, and poor brother Reggie was like trying to get updates. But when I am in that place where things are hectic and crazy, and I'm tired, I'm not good at updating people. Like, it's just not like if someone dies or if it's critical, I will let you know. I need to be better about that. But
and that's why, like, I didn't text you much for the updates, because I knew that you would tell me if you need to. I figured that what you needed the most was space or conversation that's different from what was going on at the time, which is why I would text you or just send random texts like, what do you think about doing like this one day or whatever? And
that's because we're best friends, because that's, me, and most people don't know that about me. Is I don't want to drown myself in what is. I want to talk about something positive that's going to happen, or I don't care if it's something silly. But I love that people cared, and I appreciated it. And but I knew that my grandmother was here, letting everybody know what was going on. So
yesterday I sent you a text, and I think this is going to be a bit funny, because we've had some talks about like projects in the church. Like, it would be really cool if we started a school or something. Yesterday I went to a body shop to get my car looked at, to get a quote. And when I was there, I had to get the quote, so then after I got the quote, I would talk to the insurance company. And because my school did not teach financial literacy or anything like that, I actually didn't learn about how insurance worked until this situation happened. I had to do the research myself, and my dad called me and walked me through it. And so I had a hard time, and there was I literally, and I know this is me airing my dirty laundry out, I actually didn't know what a deductible was until like earlier this week. Okay. Because I just wasn't taught anything about that. And it just so happens that at the same time, when I was at home, in between like going to the body shop, coming home, calling the insurance company, going back to the body shop and everything, my roommate was watching a video and a series, and I don't even really know what the guy is called, but he was auditing this couple, and he was like looking at their financial statements and everything, because they were in like a lot of debt. And then he had said, you realize the reason y'all are in debt is because your spending habits are awful, right?
Right.
And
something so simple.
Right. And then so something like Sammy and I ended up having a whole conversation about how, like, I'm aware that saving money is hard, and that the economy now, a lot of people don't make enough money. But also, I think a big part of the struggles people have is the fact that they don't know how to save money.
Yeah.
And so,
it's also our desire to want to consume is higher than we can afford.
And so, I was thinking about that, and I realized, I'm pretty sure most people haven't taken financial literacy classes, or at the very least, they took those classes and like weren't educated enough in it. And so, completely out of context, yesterday I texted Nikki, if we ever start a school, we need to make financial literacy mandatory, and then didn't talk to her for the rest of the day.
Yeah. When we were traveling, I think I slept like the 5.5 hours home. I think I slept that whole time. But I do agree with you. When I saw it, actually, I think I started to text you at one point and then never pressed send. That was a bad habit this past week. But as an accountant and someone who is, that's what I do, I think it's wonderful. And I agree with you because, I know people in their 40s that have no idea how to manage their money. And, people, generation before me, and even my generation, because my husband loves Dave Ramsey, he teaches how to save money. He gives you rules. Mm-hmm. And so there are many ways to teach people that. But yeah, I think our kids need it for sure.
Yeah, and one thing that I desire as a pastor, because I want to be a head pastor one day, I want to take the things that we've built with this ministry and be able to expand that into a larger church setting. And I think that that's entirely possible, and it's something that I'd love to see happen one day. And one thing that I really like about the way that this ministry has been built is how well these kids get educated on the Bible, and just like putting tidbits of education into all the messages, but then also being very education minded in Sunday school, so that whenever issues that people would have in the Bible, like tithing, for instance, or like baptism or the Lord's Supper and all that stuff, there really isn't always a lot of confusion about that stuff around this group because of how much we talk about it.
And we also have kids who, good, bad, or indifferent. A lot of them are, I won't say raising themselves, but they're going to, the minute they can leave the home, they're going to leave the home and start trying to build a life. And, the gumption and want to build a life for yourself outside of your parents' home is a lot different than having the ability and knowledge to. So I think giving them that is important. I think I wanted to do free computer classes at the library before, financial classes, scammer classes, just for even the older generation. Because for you talking about, wanting to be a head pastor one day, because they're even, people say, well, the church is just a business. And the truth is the church is not a business. It is the house of the Lord. But it still has to buy things and pay for things and spend for ministry and outreach and salaries. And if the person who's sitting at the head of that doesn't really understand what they're looking at, it causes a lot of confusion and chaos. And so I think even for, young pastors like yourself, it's important to have that knowledge so that people can't just tell you something in a finance meeting.
Yeah.
And you not understand it.
Yeah. It's crazy how this kind of ties into one of the lectures I had in seminary this past week, because I'm on a class, I'm in a missions class right now. And one of the things that we talked about was cross-cultural ministry. And they told a story about this guy that runs an Arabic church in New Orleans. And he said they have the regular Sundays and Wednesdays, and they have have regular outreach. He said the thing that caused the church to grow was the fact that they also started offering English as a second language class. They started Upward Basketball. They started an RA program. They started actually going out in the community and doing community projects, building a community rec center and everything. And I used to be told that doing community stuff, serving anything outside of the church building is not the church's job. But the more that I'm reading the Bible and learning about what a church is supposed to do and what the Great Commission looks like, I realize that it's not just the job of the person to go and make disciples and to go see Christ move in people's lives. It's also the job of the church to go and the church community to go and make disciples of the outside community.
Yeah.
So that requires us to be outside and to, do that kind of. And you obviously weren't around for this week of ministry, but one thing that we talked about was what it means to be a lukewarm Christian. And I brought up the fact that true lukewarm Christianity has consumed the church nowadays, and especially the Church of the United States. It's just people don't care as much. People aren't educating people on the Bible as much. Discipleship is out the window for a lot of people.
Oh yeah.
There's a church that I went to and I'm not going to say the name of it, but there was a church that I went to in Lafayette, and I was invited to one of their Bible studies. And when I went to their Bible study, they did not open the Bible once. They called it a discipleship group or something. They talked about like faith, courage. They talked about dealing with Christianity in your work life, but we didn't open the Bible. And then I went to one of the church services, and the pastor didn't open the Bible. He quoted scripture, but he also used it in the wrong context. And then the worship songs, like there was lines in the worship songs that was just not what I find in the Bible. And I was like, this entire church feels unbiblical.
Right.
You know? But
I bet everybody felt good.
Oh yeah, everybody probably felt good. And it's hard whenever you see what the Bible, if you look at the Bible for what it says, and we have a tendency to put our own presuppositions into it, like we read the Bible from a 21st century perspective.
Absolutely.
But if you actually look at it from the perspective of the first century, you kind of see a very community-driven Christianity, a very loving Christianity, a Christianity that is accepting. When I say accepting, I don't mean affirming the sin in a person's life, like accepting
it's quite opposite. They were
their
very
identity,
bold. Yeah.
Right? They were accepting of each other in spite of their sin, and actually helping share the love of Christ.
And it was a bold faith, and it was, we love the sinner, not the sin. And I agree with you 100%. I think that Christianity today is about doing just enough to feel good about ourselves, and it's all philanthropic and altruistic, and not really about the Lord. Yeah,
and so that was really good, because this past week, like I said, we finished up the series in Revelation, where the last book, the last letter in the 7 letters, the church to Laodicea, Jesus is talking to the lukewarm church. And I was able to compare that to some of the behaviors today. And I'd like to go into it like later on in this podcast.
So it feels like this whole week was a Twilight Zone.
It was interesting, for sure. It was interesting. Yeah, and we had chip night, and what I do like is that we celebrated a lot of milestones. For me, I got to come forward for my 5-month chip. For those of you who don't know, at Celebrate Recovery, my own recovery has been, I've been to Celebrate Recovery for years, even before we started one. I had a lot of things in my life that I've been working through, and most recently, I started over on the step studies and the chips because I'm preparing to get married. And there's aspects of my life that I want to let go of before I get married. Like, I think everybody has this, like there are certain habits they have that is harmful, that would be harmful to their relationship no matter what.
Sure.
And I want to be able to identify those things and then let go of them as much as I can before I get married. And so I've been focusing on that on Celebrate Recovery, and I came forward for my 5-month chip this past week.
And I missed it. I'm so sorry.
It's fine.
I would have much rather had been there.
I think the 6-month chip is more important, in my opinion. So
halfway month.
So you're going to be there next month. And then Thursday night we didn't even meet because I was at the body shop all day getting my car figured out. And then when I finally finished, I didn't have time to go home and write a lesson. I mean, I know exactly what it was going to be on, but I didn't have time to write the lesson. And so I was on the phone with my dad, and he was like, so are you going to go to the church today? And then I said, Dad, young adult starts at 6 and it's 4 and I haven't started the lesson. And then I said, so I'm going to send out a text and then cancel on everybody and then just apologize. And then he said, okay, you want to come over? And I was like, sure. And he said, it's just because like I haven't actually seen you in a while, and we had leftovers. And I will share that when I didn't realize how much I needed that because I've been so stressed with everything happening in my life, and there's so much more that happened this week in my personal life that I'm not going to share, but just know I had one of those weeks, right? And so I go to my parents' house, and Emily's at work. So it was just me, and my car is still messed up. And I show up, and my dad has a roll of duct tape, and then he was like, I know this is a temporary fix, but let's just like put your front bumper back together so you can use this car,
right? And
then we'll try to get you fixed sometime soon. And I walked into the front door of my parents' house. My mom just gave me the biggest hug and said, I heard about what happened. I'm so sorry. Like, I'm so glad that you're okay.
You needed your family in that moment.
Right. And like, I will say that the reason that what happened was there was when I was on the interstate driving to the church. It was on Tuesday actually, and I was in the middle lane, and then the person that was on the passing lane to the left of me was a bit ahead of me, and they had a box in their tailgate, and it fell out and landed in the middle lane, and I got shocked, and so my first thought was, it's cardboard, so I guess I'll drive through it. My second thought was, that's a bad idea. And so it took me about a split second to actually react, but so then I decided to swerve, and by that point I was too close to it, and so I swerved, and then the car actually collided with, the front left side of my car collided with that box. I don't know what was in that thing, but the entirety of my left fog light fell out, even the body of it.
But just depending on how fast you were going.
Yeah, I was on the interstate.
The velocity alone could have done that.
And so I looked like and so the car looked like Rocky after fighting Apollo Creed. The front of the
cut me, Nick.
The left light was out, and then it looked like he had a broken jaw because the thing was dragging against the floor, and it was bad. So
movie reference number 1.
Right. So yeah, it was an interesting week. But I will say that out of the Tuesday and Thursday that didn't go as well as it could have, that was made up for by a very powerful Wednesday night. You weren't here to train the worship team, so and I had something that came up at the very last minute, so I couldn't train them, but they wanted to practice, and so Hannah just went and trained them on her own without our help for the first time, and worship was lovely. It was beautiful. They even did a new song that they learned.
I have all the faith in the world in these kids, and
yeah.
And Hannah, we call her my mini-me, but she's quite incredible. She's going to be something very powerful in the ministry.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I don't think she knows that we call her the mini-you because we call it between the two of us. So when she watches this podcast,
no, I think I call her my mini-me.
Okay.
Because we always make a joke that I'm Emily in the future and Emily's Hannah in the future, and we're just like.
And then Hannah's Kinsley in the future.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's but actually we took some pictures at the Po' Boy sale that past Saturday, which we got to talk about that too because we haven't talked about that.
Oh, you're right.
And so my husband.
Well, this wasn't this past Saturday. That was like 3 Saturdays ago.
That's right, 2 Saturdays. Yeah. And so we took pictures, and my husband was going through them, and he was like, "I can't believe you were working in the kitchen." And I went, "What?" And he was like, "You're working in the kitchen." I was like, "I was never in the kitchen." So we zoom in, and it's Hannah with her messy ponytail and her glasses, and I was like, "No, that's Hannah."
That's so funny.
So
I'm trying to see. I have pictures so I can actually see how long ago it was.
It was 2 Saturdays ago because I only missed one Sunday, and it was the Saturday before.
It's 2 Saturdays. It is the
20th.
picture of me and Gavin that night at the birthday party.
Nice.
Yeah.
We did have a birthday party that night. God, we haven't so many things.
So many things have happened in just the past 2 weeks.
Yeah.
But no, yeah, we had a really good night of ministry. The Po' Boy sale was amazing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, like it was one of those fundraisers, one of those events that we did that like I had a bit of faith in it, but like you know how you always have something that you're excited about, but there's like a little bit of pause in the back of your head, like it might not go well.
Yeah.
That's how it was for the Po' Boy sale. And do you know the number of how much we made? Do you want to share that?
Wasn't it like 6,900 some change? Something like that? 7,000?
7,000? Like
okay.
7,300 or something? It was wild.
Yeah.
And then...
And the adults really didn't have to do anything. The youth kicked butt in serving and getting it all done.
And then, something else happened this past week where like a situation that had come up recently was absolved, and then now our youth fund has been fully restored, and so we can like pay for YEC.
Nice.
And just from the money that we've raised, and the kids like I think the only thing they have to pay for is the deposit. So it's been like, man, this YEC this year is going to be incredible.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is, but there's just something in the air that I think this is going to be different, and I love it.
That's how we know. In all the chaos, there's still Christ, right? He's still working.
So anyways, I want to actually move on from that and talk about our next segment, where like I want to kind of go into what we talked about these past weeks in our lessons. Mm-hmm. In fact, even though we didn't meet on Thursday, I still want to talk about the series that we were going to start today,
right.
And what we're going to talk about. When I first started learning about Christ, started building my relationship with Christ, my dad would teach me about Christianity and about life. And I did not have a grasp on the Bible at the time. And I think that he was still in a place where he was learning as well. So one thing that he would do is he would use football as an object lesson to explain stuff.
Sure.
And that's why now, like every now and then, I'll actually go back to that and connect with that, because that helps. If it can help me understand a topic, then it can help somebody else.
Sure.
And there was a scene that me and him loved and that we would reference a lot.
Is this the facing? Oh,
is it Friday Night Lights?
I thought you were going to say Facing the Giants, where he like pushes him down the field.
That is a wonderful scene.
It is.
But I was talking about it's a scene in Friday Night Lights, and it's during season 1 when Coach Taylor is very exasperated. A lot of stuff is happening, and he feels like his team needs to step up in leadership, and something happens where he needs to discipline the kids. So he calls one of the seniors. I think he calls Matt Saracen, the quarterback, and says, "I need you to gather everybody up and make sure that they are going to make sure that we're all meeting at the school, because I have something for us." And so everybody meets at the school. He gets and this is like late at night. He put them all on the bus, and then he goes out into the field, or goes into a hill, and then it starts to rain. And basically he tears them a new one and then yells at them about some stuff. And then he says, "So what we're going to do so that we can learn how to be disciplined, we're going to start running hills until I'm tired of watching y'all. I don't care how tired y'all get." Very typical coach move.
Yeah, I've had that in basketball before.
And so the part of the scene that really spoke to me, that speaks to him as well, is that the team starts going, and then they're tired and they're feeling beat up, and then Coach Taylor's actually about to tell them that they can quit, and everybody's like meeting at the bottom of the hill, and they're like tired, and everyone's like panting and everything, and then suddenly one of the linebackers stands up straight and yells, "Clear eyes, full hearts, can't lose. Clear eyes, full hearts, can't lose. Clear eyes, full hearts." And then everybody starts chanting it with them, and then I think it was Smash. He yells, "All right, go." And then everybody just starts running those hills. And that's supposed to be in the scene. It's supposed to show that this is a team that actually is willing to persevere. And it's a team that's willing to work together. And I think about that whenever I feel like I've run the hills so many times. Mm-hmm. And I feel like I'm being beaten up by whatever habit I'm trying to stop, or whatever it is that I can't seem to move on from. I just say, like, clear eyes, full hearts, can't lose. And then you just keep going.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Wish we would have talked about that last time. I could have said that these last 2 weeks. But the truth is, so to add to that, my mom and I both have chronic illness, and she's kind of in the beginning of her journey, and it's it's very hard when you don't have answers, and everything we tried to do these past 2 weeks, just something went wrong. Mm-hmm. And then at one point she was stressing out, and I said, "Mom, wherever we're supposed to be in the next 20 minutes is exactly where God wanted us to be." It's like, how do you eat an elephant, one bite at a time? Mm-hmm. Like, the next 20 minutes is all you need to worry about, and wherever we're at is exactly where we're supposed to be. And just calming yourself down, and recovery's like that for me too. Saying, "Oh, I feel like I'm gonna have a drink. Okay, let me just get through the next 20 minutes.
Let me just make it to the end of the day. Let me just make it to dinner time."
Give yourself a goal, small, and then you get to a month, or you get to the next chip.
I've never heard that elephant thing before.
Really? How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time?
You know what I have heard? Do you know how do you fit an elephant into a refrigerator?
How?
You clear it out and then put the elephant in. Do you know how you put a giraffe in the refrigerator?
Same way.
You take the elephant out first, and then you put the giraffe.
Yeah, that was I had a friend, honestly, when I first got into ministry, and I just was so overwhelmed by something that was big, and she said, hey, how do you eat an elephant? And I was like, what?
One bite at a time, girl.
And she was like, one bite at a time. You have this big vision, and you have to take one bite of it at a time.
Yeah, and what's really cool is that Elijah is starting to learn about coding in high school. Mm-hmm. And he had a class this past week on like algorithms and problem solving, and he had explained that, like, he used to tell me about it because he gets excited and tells me about his classes when I'm driving him to church. And he was telling me that what his teacher taught them is that whenever you want to solve a problem, you take the big problem and then you break it up into small goals. And then you just ask yourself, how do you like breach those individual goals? And then I said, honestly, she taught you a much more important life lesson than you think she taught you. I do want to kind of focus this podcast in on youth ministry because it's kind of what we've been trying to do. And you were actually a part of this thing because there was something that happened earlier this week over text that we had to deal with.
It's a very interesting thing to get while I was sitting in the Disney.
Well, do you want to share about it? Because I want to hear your experience with what it was.
Well, because I was so disconnected these past, I'm not disconnected, but I think we were all just giving each other, I think I was just kind of trying to disappear for a couple weeks and take a break. But so I wasn't really involved. Mm-hmm. And then out of nowhere, I get this I was actually outside on the phone with somebody back home, and I get this text. It's like, we need to address this. And I was like, huh?
You can say it was from me because I'm the one that sent the text.
Oh, yeah. I wasn't not saying it was from you for a reason. So Noah sent me and Hannah, we have a little group text because we do like social media and stuff together, and said, we need to, some of our youth were calling each other baddies and king and just using names that they don't necessarily have bad intentions for, but it's inappropriate in this setting and they don't know it's inappropriate. Mm-hmm. Or it's not necessarily that it is inappropriate, but it's more that we just want to give them the resources and tools and knowledge to do something different and better. Mm-hmm. And so I was just confused. And then finally, I think Noah sent me the context. Mm-hmm. He's like, what? We need to come up with what we need to do. And I'm like, I was thinking to myself, I have no context. And right about then you were like, here's the context.
Here's the screenshot, yeah.
And I was like, okay, got it.
Yeah, and so what had happened was I've heard people use the word baddie around this youth ministry, but I've also heard other terms being used as well.
Yeah.
So I've been thinking about addressing the language that we use anyways. And then somebody sends a screenshot to the YEC group chat that I made only for alerts and for notifications. And it's a screenshot of somebody in our youth ministry that posted a picture of me doing something funny. And I'm actually okay with that because it didn't have any context, any words or anything. Mm-hmm. But then somebody slid up, and it was on Snapchat, slid up and said, wow, Noah's a baddie for real. Yeah. And then these are girls, by the way, teenage girls, and one of them responded with, he's totally our king. He's a baddie for real. Yeah. And then that screenshot was posted on that person's story. And so one of my older students that's actually preparing to start our leadership program took a screenshot of that and then texted the YEC group chat, which I actually told him afterwards he needs to text it to a leader individually instead of displaying it to the whole group.
Yeah.
But that actually became a teaching moment in itself. He texted the YEC group chat and then he just said, guys, we need to grow up. Yeah. And I appreciated that part. And so I read it and then I just said, hey, we can't be calling each other that, especially not me. And then Hannah she comes in and she tries to damage control and says, yeah, because Noah's not a bad guy, but you're calling him a villain and everything.
Right.
LOL. And then I texted Hannah and I texted the student that sent the screenshot individually. And then I said, for the record, I know that y'all realize that it means something else, but I want to make things clear before I address this.
Sure.
This is what baddie means, and I want to know that we're on the same page.
Yeah. And
then they agreed. And so I said, okay, I'm going to address this. And so I sent the text to the leadership team. And I'm going to kind of share my perspective on it now because I realized at youth the next day or the Wednesday, people did not understand why I was upset about it. And so I want to kind of just set the record straight right now.
Well, but before you do that,
okay.
But one of the things, so leading up to, they've been using these terms for a while and we've never really, and it became when it started externally getting out there that they were saying these things. Because I think every Wednesday and Sunday since I've seen these girls, they literally, one of them will say, Miss Nikki's a baddie, and I don't think anything of it. I think that's just their terminology. And so we let it go for a long time, hoping that it was, but when it started to go external, mm-hmm. and reputation in ministry is a big deal. And so it was important. When you sent that to me, I knew the importance and the gravity of it for multiple reasons.
And and so I want to kind of explain the situation and then kind of rope that into how we handled it, connect that with Wednesday night's lesson, And then how does that play into what we talked about on Tuesday, if that's okay, to give an idea of how we're going to do this?
Yeah. Because how we would have typically handled it couldn't happen because we weren't all here.
Right. And so when I read this text, the reason why, again, to make this very clear, because when I mentioned it on Wednesday, I addressed it in front of the group on Wednesday, which I'm going to get to in a second. The first thing I said was, do we understand why this is not a good thing to call somebody? Everybody said no.
Right.
I even had a senior in high school ask me what that means. Right. So, because I know that some of the youth group watches this, and I know that people that are on other social media platforms probably watch this, the word baddie in social media context and the way it's been used is implying that the person that you're calling a baddie is attractive to you, and invokes a feeling of arousal. Right. Without getting demonetized here. In other words, if you call somebody a baddie, that is somebody that you would fantasize over. That's the kind of person that is.
Or want to be.
Or want to be with, right? These are usually people that are with a lot of, that usually try to, will get a lot of partners, or at least a lot of people will be attracted to them. These are people that will dress in certain types of ways that is not becoming of a Christian. Sure. And to call somebody a baddie is to say that you have these feelings towards them in that way.
But it also, on the girl side of things, it doesn't necessarily mean that, because we're calling each other baddies. And so, or the girls are calling each other baddies. And it's about saying, like, she's a boss, or her attitude is such that she doesn't take anything off of anybody, and, you know.
And I'll tell you this from a guy's perspective, and that at least in the circle that I grew up in, we would say this girl's bad, saying that she is, she's attractive, or she's fine, or whatever. And so, whenever I hear girls calling each other baddies, I also assume that they are acknowledging that the friend that they're talking to is hot, or fine, or attractive. At least that's the circle that I'm in, how they refer to it. And so what I said was, hey, if you are calling me that, then you are saying, you, teenagers, children, are saying me, an adult who is over you, right, is a baddie. It can be misconstrued to some people that you find me attractive, and that can get me in a lot of trouble.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's, you know, I think that points to, in our ministry, what we do with youth is that fine line between being their friend, mm-hmm, being their mentor, and then being their authority. And so that's what really had to be addressed.
I'm actually really glad that it came up the way that it did, because how we handled this was I made sure that it was crystal clear among my older students why I was not okay with this. And then I told them that what they need to do is, if they see it, they need to say something and then send a screenshot of it to us. Mm-hmm. And then in youth, for Let's Talk About It, since you weren't here, I led it. And I actually was able to do a 2-part Let's Talk About It, where last week we talked about misunderstandings of the Bible and how it's being taught on social media. And then this week we talked about misunderstandings about the words we say and how that's being taught. Last week I taught people how
I just thought y'all were just going to hold off this week on doing.
Well, last week we talked about how do we protect ourselves from being misled spiritually, mm-hmm, and I actually used the whole rapture situation, mm-hmm, with that
the world was supposed to end on the 23rd?
Yeah, and I actually explained biblically why I was able to tell that it wasn't happening, and then I started up by saying my job as your spiritual leader is to protect you and to teach you how to protect yourselves from these things. And so this is what you need to do. This is how you handle this, and this is how you compare it to the Bible. And also, if you see anything spiritual and biblical on TikTok, I need you to understand. And when I said this, in the Bible, every letter of the apostles was endorsed by somebody else. The apostles were all known, they were endorsed, and they had a relationship with each other. And so when they wrote to each other, they had a reason to trust that. In today's world, I can go on TikTok and call myself a prophet, yeah, coming from nowhere, and if the right people believe me, they can cause something. Right. People are more willing to believe some person that they found on TikTok more than they're willing to believe a pastor they have a personal relationship with. Right. People are willing to argue with a pastor that they know that has credentials, that has been studied, because some random user on TikTok said something that appealed more to some kind of presupposition or bias that they already had.
Well, absolutely.
And so I had said that, like, we have to learn that God gave us our spiritual leaders for a reason. He gave us the church for a reason, and part of that reason is so we can have people to lean on and to trust when it comes to questions about truth.
Yeah, and questioning, even if we have grown-ups. I mean, I have grown-ups that will come to me and ask me a question, and I can see it in their face, or the fact that they keep coming, that they don't quite believe what I'm telling them.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's biblical or making it doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
They're not buying it. And so they go and they question. That is okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay to have, like, hey, I read this in the Bible, or especially baptism or the Lord's Supper or something like that, and I'm still not sure about it. That's okay. But at least come to people who have a learned, studied knowledge set in biblical principles
Mm-hmm.
to ask the question.
Yeah, and I mean, I'll even say it right here and right now. I don't think that online influencers are necessarily by nature bad,
No.
because I actually learn a lot from the Bible by watching, it would be a dream of mine if one of them even watched this podcast at any point. But Wesley Huff, Mike Winger, The Daily Disciple, those three guys, I like to watch their stuff because I learn a lot from them. But what I have to teach them is that I learn a lot from watching their stuff, but I don't trust them over my own pastor. And
Right.
that's not a personal attack on you guys. That's more like because I don't actually know you, you know?
Right.
And
I don't
so-
know what your life looks like. I don't know if you're living the biblical principles you're teaching me.
But
That's
what you're
important.
teaching me is lining up with the Bible, so it gives me something to think about.
It's a resource.
Right. And so what I tell the students is there's actually nothing wrong with watching a sermon online or connecting and seeing this, but it's important that that becomes some, what's a good way to put it? It's important that that becomes a source of thought
Becomes part
and a
of the
source
annex.
of research, right?
Yeah.
Gives you something to think about. But at the end of the day, it needs to be brought up into your own personal relationship with Christ and your own discipleship so that your leader can walk you through it.
Agreed.
And that was actually we were able to easily pour into last week about how in the same way that stuff that the Bible or is taught incorrectly in TikTok and everything, on social media, we don't even think about what we are listening to and what we are saying and how that can affect other people. And then I said, guys, words are very powerful.
Very.
Words are what the Bible is made up of, you know? And whenever we have a sound in the background of our TikTok videos,
Yeah.
we don't think about what the words of that sound is.
Yep, because it's just a trend.
Right, but some of those words actually teach things or will say stuff that's antithetical to what we were trying to teach in the church. And so what I said was, in the same way that we need to be careful about the people we listen to and what we trust, we need to be careful about the music we listen to
Yeah.
and the way that we talk. And just because Ice Spice and Doja Cat call each other baddies on their songs on TikTok doesn't mean we should be calling each other that.
Right.
You know?
And as we're trying to define those words, it's hard to even define them without using worse words of what they mean to women and to men. But we've been fighting that battle with social media with them for a long time. The best thing was if I see it happening, I'm going to show everybody in the youth group. And so it was important that we start addressing that, and we've been addressing it for a long time. The first song I ever heard was actually a song in, I think it was Bruno Mars song, but the whole thing was in Spanish. And so they had no idea what it was saying.
Yeah.
And it was not a great song, and they were all posting and doing it in the youth room, and I just flat out said, take it down.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot do anything in this church that does not represent God. And yes, I know that means I'm not telling them to go do it outside of church, but inside we're teaching them to respect this place. And
Mm-hmm. So what I actually told them was that the reason why we talk so much about social media is because social media has unintentionally taught, maybe it was intentional, I don't know, has taught people that you can blindly listen to something, and that's fine. There is a trend, and I'm not going to say what it is, but there's a current trend right now based on a Sabrina Carpenter song that is incredibly suggestive and has a lot of innuendo in it, that I have seen teenagers doing it because, and I'm willing to believe it's because they don't actually know what it means.
Sure.
You know? And the reason I know that is because when I actually ask people in the youth ministry why they play this song or that song, they don't say because of this and that, because of the deep reasoning behind it. They say, oh, because it's popular.
Right, or like it has a good beat. There are songs that, listen, I grew up listening to that I loved, and now that I listen to them as an adult, I'm going, why did my parents let me listen to this?
And there's a point to all that I'm saying here.
Right.
We live in a world where we as people are built for community. We are built to be of the same heart and mind, that Acts chapter 4 mindset, and because of that, we feel that people feel connected through social media.
Sure. And
so when there's a common mind on social media, there's a common mind online, we have a tendency to just accept what it's being taught without any thought.
Yeah.
We're seeing this also happening in churches, where people are accepting what's being taught in the church without thinking about it. And I want to set another record straight. I think that if you're not that if you are not going home and questioning what your pastor is saying, then that's actually not healthy for the church, because if you are actually looking into what your pastor is saying and you're finding out what he is saying is biblical, that will not only strengthen your relationship with the Bible, but it will also help with your trust with the pastor. Right. And so we need to be able to be willing to think about what we're doing and what we're teaching. And I don't want to set that expectation on children because they're kids.
It's too much.
But what I do want to set is an expectation on adults to teach kids to be mindful.
Well, and something that has become very prominent is that you get up on Sunday, you come to church, you go home, you go through the week, you come on Wednesday, you come to church, you go home, and you do it all over again. But where God is not, is on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Like, so many people are coming and just hearing the word and then going home. Or maybe they listen to Caleb on the radio, or they're getting some of that Christian music, but they're not truly spending time learning more about what they're being taught. And some of our kids, this is to the hats off to the leadership of this youth group. That is so important to us, that it's not about us. It's not that they come here. It's that one of the greatest moments I've ever had as leading this youth is when they will come up to me and say, I shared the gospel.
Yeah.
And so, or when we see them on TikTok actually using social media to just read scripture. And there's a desire to create a community that's set in God and not, trend.
And so let me move this into the big picture, because it all plays into things. On Tuesday night, we talked about staying focused on our recovery, so that we can reach that 1 year. How do we actually prevent ourselves from falling into the trap of the mainstream? How do we prevent ourselves from falling into the trap of saying stuff we don't know what they mean, or falling into stuff? It's the same way that we prevent ourselves from falling into lukewarm Christianity.
Sure.
And because we read Revelation chapter 3. Let me read it out actually right now. In Revelation 3, and Jesus is talking to the church of Laodicea, and he says, "Write to the angel of the church in Laodicea, thus says the Amen, the faithful and true, the originator of God's creation. I know your works, that you are neither hot nor cold. I wish that you were cold or hot. So because you are lukewarm and neither hot nor cold, I am going to vomit you out of your mouth. For you say, I am rich, I have become wealthy, and need nothing, and you don't realize that you are wretched, pitiful, poor, blind, and naked. I advise you to buy from me gold refined in the fire, so you may be dressed in your shameful nakedness, not to be exposed, and an ointment to spread on your eyes, so that you may see. As many as I love, I rebuke and discipline, so be zealous and repent. See, I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come into him and eat with him and he with me." So what I notice is that the way that you pull yourself out of this lukewarmness, Jesus is hinting at right here, where it says, be zealous, repent. He says, it says, take the gold from me. It says in verse 17, you don't realize that you are poor, blind, and naked. Okay? And then in verse 15 and 16, it says, you think you're hot and cold, but you're actually lukewarm.
Right.
What you say is that there's this perception of I'm actually this, but you don't realize you're this.
Sure.
It's because, and I think that a big part of it is because we are not allowing ourselves, we are not focused on what is important. We are allowing ourselves to be distracted and think one thing other than what's being true.
Right. Well,
What
that's
I'm
why we
getting at
talk
here-
about that's why we talk about distractions
Right.
so much on Wednesdays. And let's talk about it.
And what I'm getting at here is that in order for us to actually avoid being a lukewarm Christian, we have to be willing to set those little milestones and to stay focused on our relationship with Christ and what's important, and set those reminders every single day so that we don't fall into the trap of complacency. Because that's what leads to us teaching and believing stuff that's not biblical.
Well, and that's what, we talk about lukewarm. Cold, you generally know, like, I've turned my back on the church. I don't want to be part of the church. Hot, you're just running for the Lord. Lukewarm is that place of comfortability. Or maybe I do just enough, but I'm not so bad off that I realize that I'm not actually serving and giving my life over to God. And so it's about breaking that comfortability.
I'm really glad that you said it that way, because what you just said was the common understanding of that verse, and that's actually very wrong. And I'm sorry, I don't mean to be mean. But, and I think it's important that I pull this out, because
we're going to do this in public.
Because, well, think about this. If to be cold is to be turned away from the church, why does Jesus say, I would rather you be cold?
Because when you are lukewarm, you can do more harm. And I don't believe that I'm wrong, by the way, but I love that we're going to have this on here. Because when you are lukewarm, you can do more damage. If I'm going out there in the world and I'm lukewarm and I'm still preaching Jesus or teaching Jesus, but then I'm out there doing things that are also not biblical, or I'm sinning, but I'm also trying to teach God, then I am teaching more people that they can be lukewarm. Or that I'm teaching people who aren't saved that this is what Christianity looks like and that's all they need to do. And I am risking their souls.
And so the reason why I would argue that the cold person is also the lukewarm person is because what Jesus says is that I would rather you be hot or cold, but if you're lukewarm, I would spit you out. Saying that if you are lukewarm, you're not allowed in the kingdom of heaven. But if you're cold, you are. And if you are hot, you are. And so
I don't think that he's saying you're not allowed in the kingdom of heaven at all in either any of those. I think cold is, if you're cold, just sit down in a corner somewhere and get out of the way, and because you're not going to be teaching people bad doctrine or leading them away from Christ. Just go. I'd rather you be cold and not be a messenger for the church. If you're hot, obviously we want you to be out there. But lukewarm is just more dangerous.
So in verse 17, it says, I'm rich, I have become wealthy and need nothing. You say, I'm rich, I've become wealthy, need nothing. Talking to the lukewarm person. He's saying, you who is lukewarm are saying, I'm rich and I'm good. But what you don't realize is that you're wretched, pitiful, poor, blind, and naked. Calling the lukewarm person blind, naked, and poor. Right. And Jesus calls the Pharisees blind and naked and poor as well, to symbolize that they don't recognize that they need Christ.
Well, that's why I said comfortability.
Yeah.
Because we do, even in our recovery and life, sometimes we get so used to just going through the motions that we don't realize the life that we're living and how off center it is and how lukewarm or cold that it is.
Mm-hmm. So I want to point out that I think I kind of misspoke a minute, because I think the only part where the misunderstanding is what it means to be cold, mm-hmm. because the lukewarm Christian is the one, I would argue that the lukewarm Christian is the one who is complacent, but also the one who's turned his back from the church. Because biblically speaking, again, Jesus accepts the cold and he accepts the hot. He doesn't accept the lukewarm. I don't see why he would accept somebody that has rejected him, but people will say that the person who's rejected him is the cold person.
Oh, I don't see the cold person as the person who's rejected them. I just see the cold person as the person who has, like myself, who when my father died and I was so angry at God for so long, I just walked away. Mm-hmm. I didn't go and tell people, I didn't reject God, I didn't reject Jesus, none of that. I just went silent. And I did no harm going silent. That's how I see cold.
Okay. The way that I see it, and at least the way I've come to understand whenever I've looked at this text and everything, is you look at the church of Laodicea, and they were the only inland church of all the other churches that Jesus wrote to. And they had, one thing that they were known for is that they had aqueducts from the from the oceans connecting to the city, and they had a water purification system that led to the water either becoming hot or cold. They would use the hot water to cook their meats, and they'd use the cold water to preserve their meat. But the lukewarm water, they would throw it out because it was developing bacteria and mold. And so there is a use and a use for the thing that is cold, and there's a use for that which is hot.
Sure.
Jesus wants you to be either cold or hot. And I would say that
because the lukewarm would make them sick.
Right, and so I would say that the cold and the hot are the Christians, and the lukewarm is the non-Christian. The cold and the hot is the Christian. The lukewarm is the person who claims to be a Christian but isn't. Right. And the point that I brought up, and why I think it's important that we talk about being mindful of what you were doing, what you were learning, is because I argued that I think that that one way that people even in this ministry become lukewarm is because once they call themselves Christians, once they get saved, they become comfortable in that title and think, because I call myself a Christian and because I believe in Jesus, I don't have to do anything.
Sure.
He's not talking to me. I'm calling myself a Christian. But Jesus is saying, you're calling yourself rich, but you don't realize you're naked.
Right.
You know?
Exactly.
And so I talked about what does a lukewarm person look like? A lukewarm person is one who is unrepentant, because Jesus says you must repent in verse 19. And he says a lukewarm person is unresponsive. You know, it says in verse 18 that you must accept the gold refined by me. A lukewarm person is a person that is useless and that is unwilling to work in the church. And so we have people that if you want to look at it from the perspective of a youth group, you know, we have a lot of kids that are passionate, that are really pushing and willing to preach the gospel. We also have kids that are showing up and saying, I'm a Christian, I'm saved and everything.
Yeah,
but then they're also,
yeah.
But some of them will be sitting in worship and not responding.
Yeah.
Or some of them, like, I will have a conversation with them about their salvation and then point out that there's some areas they need to work and then not do anything about it. Mm-hmm. I would go as far as to say that is lukewarmness.
Sure, and I agree with that.
Mm-hmm. I actually went as far as to say that, like, I would argue that if you are lukewarm, I would question your salvation. And the reason is because I don't believe in a works-based salvation. Mm-hmm. However, if you are saved, then your works would reflect that. And I actually used Malachi as an example because he was making fun of me earlier that day. And I said, so let's say Malachi is a defendant in court, and the judge drops a gavel and says, all right, Malachi, I sentence you to death. And everyone kind of laughed, like, what would Malachi do? You know, and everything. And I said, imagine if Malachi is about to go to death, and then I raised my hand and said, I'm going to take his place. Right. I'm going to be the one that's going to be put to death. I said, would it be crazy? Would it be offensive for me to make the claim that if Malachi, after being saved from the death penalty because his youth pastor, someone who loves him, died for him, if Malachi goes on to commit the exact same crime that got him on the death penalty, I would argue that he doesn't care about me at all. I would argue that he doesn't, that what I did, that he doesn't love me, and that what I did for him means nothing.
Right, well, look at Barabbas.
Right.
We don't think that Barabbas, when they chose Jesus over him and let him go, that he went and started this, like, amazing gospel-driven life. He went back to crime, more than likely. But, so, it sounds like we believe pretty close to, the context.
We use they use different words, but yes, we understand the same way.
Yeah, so, but I agree with you, and I think when I think of the word hot, like, if I'm a lukewarm Christian, to your point, I think you can only be hot or cold if you are saved. Because you're either angry and you stepped away for something, usually it's the church hurts you or whatever that is, and you've stepped away and you're pouting in a corner for a while and you don't do anything, or you're so grateful for the grace that God has given you through his son Jesus Christ that you are just like on fire. And that's my experience.
Yeah.
So yeah, I agree with you. Well, it also has in the scripture where it says, like, if you will, stand at the door and knock.
I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come into him and eat with him, and he with me. What I loved is that after this message, a bunch of people came to me afterwards and asked me questions. And one of the big questions was, if I'm a Christian but I'm still living in sin, does that mean I'm a Christian? So then that's when I said, well, I said the same thing to so many people. Yeah, we have to talk about what it means to be repentant.
Yeah.
And that kind of ropes all back into the big topic we're having about, which is being focused, right?
Yeah.
A repentant person is, okay, well, first of all, true repentance is not doing the sin anymore.
Yeah.
But I would say that true repentance starts with an attitude of repentance, which is whenever you become a repentant person. And a repentant person is somebody that would commit a sin and then mourn over that afterwards.
Right.
A repentant person is somebody that would be living in a sin, but then wanting to stop and actually genuinely having a level of heartbreak over the fact that they can't seem to stop. It's the tax collector that would beat on his chest and say, "Forgive me, for I'm a sinner." And so that's whenever I issued the challenge to the group, and I'd issue the challenge to anybody that's in recovery right now, or anybody that's falling into the trends on TikTok, is where are you actually focused right now? Is your focus on your relationship with Christ? Is your treasure the kingdom of heaven? Mm-hmm. Or are you focusing on clout? Are you focusing on making people happy? Are you focusing more on your relationship than on Christ?
Or are you also segmenting your life to where when you're here at church, you're this person, mm-hmm. and when you're at school, you're this person, and when you're on social media, you're this person? Because I would argue that we all do that in forms. Mm-hmm. But we have some girls who we have seen, I mean, it's just recently, girls who we thought were turning corners, and they still are, but then someone will send me a post and I'm just like flabbergasted. Mm-hmm. And so that's why when we did y'all had reached out about the text message, and it's like, how are we going to address this? Mm. I could only set up Real Talk Tuesday to hopefully be what you were going to address with them. We didn't talk about it. We didn't discuss, we're just like, oh, well, I said, I'll do a Real Talk Tuesday and y'all can handle Wednesday. Mm-hmm. And the Real Talk Tuesday was simply this. We talked about, I think it was Matthew 12, where it says, you will be held accountable to your careless words. Do you want to be held accountable for calling somebody a baddie? Mm-hmm. Or why can't we use words? Because when I was growing up, we would say WWJD, right? What would Jesus do? Cheesy, I know, or fraud, fully rely on God. We just wanted bracelets. But the truth is what's a better encouraging compliment than baddie? Than chosen? Mm-hmm. Or man, Miss Nikki, you're chosen. And that was what Real Talk Tuesday was about. Trying to pave the way for you to say, these words are not of God. Yeah. They're not compliments.
Yeah, and I remember I went to this kind of retreat for a college ministry I used to be a part of. And one of the guys gave a lesson on the importance of measuring our words. And then he said, we actually need to be careful about the way we joke with people, because crude, in fact, harmful joking, even making fun of people, can be harmful in a way. And he said, imagine this. What if in passing we talked about Kirk, one of the guys over there, talked about Kirk and said, man, he's so goofy, man, he's crazy, he's this and that, man, Kirk can be kind of stupid sometimes, trying to be funny. For all we know, that could be something that he's dealing with. Maybe he's self-conscious. Because some of us have this problem where I understand that the way I come across is goofy, but I'm actually self-conscious about that because I want to be more calculated in the way I am, something like that. And so he said, so what if we talked about Kirk and said, man, I love Kirk. He's funny. He's goofy in a good way. I'm so proud of the person that he is, and I love the way that he has grown. And it just makes me think about, it even says in Ephesians to avoid crude joking and unhealthy speech. No foul language should come from your mouth. What I'm thinking of is there is a lesson we did in our young adult ministry a few months ago where I talked about how the origin of sin and the origin of falling away from God starts with not paying attention anymore, being mentally unfocused. And I said in verse Ephesians 4:17, it says, therefore I say this and testify in the Lord, you should no longer walk as the Gentiles do in the futility of their thoughts. I studied what it meant in the futility of their thoughts, and before anyone accuses me of one verse theology, I studied what it meant to be a futility of their thoughts, and the reason is because afterwards Paul gives a lunge, a path that a person falls into as they fall deeper and deeper away from God. And it starts out with futility of their thoughts. So it all stems from that. Futility of thought is useless thinking. It is an empty thought. And so it's a person that doesn't pay attention. It's a person that I mean, you could say they pay attention. They don't really think about what they act, what they do.
Right.
A person who speaks without thinking about it, a person who's uncalculated, a person who doesn't have boundaries because they don't think about that, or that doesn't care about what other people feel because that doesn't cross their minds. One of those people who lives on impulse, which is more people than you think.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, we've become a 3-second society. You can only hold our attention for about 3 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
Enough time to go, yeah, nope, yep, nope, yep, nope, yep, nope. And it's created mindlessness.
Right.
So if our kids ever wonder why we're so hard on them when it comes to social media, it's because we're trying to break the mindlessness, the futility of thought. We want you to be able to think for yourself and choose. Like if you want to do dirty TikTok dances and create a life on social media or even just your private life, because that's usually where people are texting me. It's like, hey, they're doing this in the public eye, but they're doing this in private.
Mm-hmm.
That's you, and you're allowed to do that. But we want to teach you why you shouldn't.
Right, and one thing I'm going to say before we start closing off is that there has been an argument made that, well, I'm like this person at church, but I'm like this person differently because I'm just a different person there. I want to make something clear because people will argue about this. I don't believe that you can be a different person in different areas of your life.
Right.
I don't believe that at all. I think segmenting your life is a myth that we created within ourselves. Whether you realize it or not, the true you is going to come out in different ways in different areas of your life. And so even if you're trying to be a different person somewhere else, if you are a true Christian and you're just running from God, in a way, that's going to show itself. And
Sure.
Here's why I can say that. There was a time in my life where I ran away from God. And I continued going to church because I believed in Christianity, but I didn't want to be held accountable. So I'd go to church, I'd go to youth and everything. But then I also had an account on Tinder, and I was trying to meet with girls. And there was one time that I actually ended up at a girl's apartment, and we were about to do something. And then she asked me a question, then I said something in passing. And then she said, "Wait, are you a Christian?" And I go, kinda. And then she goes, "Are you comfortable with being here if you're a Christian?" And I go, "Yeah." And then she goes, "I don't like that pause. I don't want to do anything with you if there's going to be a pause. I want you to be comfortable here." And I realized that, she was probably more emotionally mature than most people in that culture. But one thing I learned in that is that, hey, I can pretend to run from this as much as I can, but the real me is still going to be seen.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I also think that some people master filters a little bit better than that. Like, I know for me, especially when I was cold, I could be whoever I wanted, wherever I wanted to be. But the people in my life knew me as a Christian, and most of the people in my life were not Christians. And so I was that Christian who was probably that people's ideas of Christianity around me was faulty, and I will be held accountable to that one day, and I've since tried to make amends for it. But I do think you can be different if your subgroups are far enough apart.
Mm-hmm.
Like if I'm here and I'm one way, and then I'm 2 states away with a group of nerdy friends and we do things and this group doesn't know that group, I think you can put on a mask and be whoever you want to be.
I do agree with that. But I think the part where I'm coming from is that it will filter and it will bleed into each other, whether you like it or not.
Yeah, because you'll come into moral conflict, and then which one wins?
If you are a lukewarm Christian and you're going to school and you're hanging out with non-Christian people and you are supporting that behavior,
yeah,
I can promise you're probably one of the least useful people in the youth group.
Yeah.
And that's not me being mean. I know which one. I know who in the youth group is lukewarm and who isn't,
Yeah.
because I pay attention.
Sure.
And I know that you're here, you're putting on a face. When I'm telling you this, and this isn't a warning, this is me telling you with love, I know who is lukewarm and I know who is living in sin, because you may not be showing the sinful side of you here, but
we know.
We know because you're not applying yourself. We know because you're not acting like a true Christian, even when you're over here. It's the little things. It's the unwillingness to do some stuff. It's the I'm here because my friend brought me here,
Yeah.
or I'm here because a boy or whatever.
Yeah, it's definitely not always because people tattle.
Yeah.
It's because we see you.
Mm-hmm.
We sit in the front right here, and obviously the people who are watching this that aren't our kids, like all of our kids' chairs are right here. And so we see everything that you do. We see it from the back of the room when we're not up here. We see you outside of this room. We see you. And this is the one piece of advice that I would give you is if you are living one way outside, if you're trying to fit into a social group and you feel that moral conflict, just know that Jesus is winning the battle.
Yeah.
And just walk away from it. Just commit. Because if you're feeling that need to walk away and like you shouldn't be where you are, just walk away from it because nothing good comes from staying in it.
And so the final thoughts that I want to have is that on Thursday night, the lesson I would have taught would have been the first part of a series called Friend of God, where we would have talked about the life of Abraham and what that tells us about how to have a true relationship with Jesus. Our Thursday night ministry has turned into something beautiful in its own way, because when we worship, they don't feel obligated to stand up. Some of them will sit down. I've heard some of them sit down and then like and singing really loudly. And I looked up and there's one person that was sitting in the front worshiping like this, and I could see it's genuine even though they're sitting there. And my lessons feel more like a conversation with them, even though I don't really ask them a lot of questions. It's more like I'll say something like, you know what I mean? They'll be like, yeah. And then after that we have breakout groups, and it's comforting and it's welcoming, and I'm loving it so much. And the last lesson we had last week was the end of the series we were in, where I talked about how true discipleship is living out the Great Commission starts with having a true love for God and what love looks like. And so I said, I want to teach you guys what it means to have an intimate and quiet relationship with Jesus. How to take your relationship with Christ that starts out in the church and actually take it home with you. And here's the thing. Here's the bottom line here, is that we need to start paying more attention. We need to start, I call it thinking past our face, right? You need to start like being calculated in what you say, and really pay attention to how people are responding to what you're saying and how people are responding to each other. And the best way for you to do that and filter that through Christ is if you have a personal at-home relationship with Christ.
Absolutely.
That is the reason why we push doing your Sunday school books. And if you want to be a better witness, if you want to be a more useful person in the church, if you are listening to this and you want to be better, but you don't know how, like even when you try to be more involved, you still fall into sin. If you develop your personal relationship with Christ at home in the quiet between you and Jesus, it's gonna start fixing itself over time.
Sure.
And so that's the best advice I can give to anybody here is focus on your love. In fact, the evidence I'll give for this, and this is the last thing I'm gonna say, is that in Ephesians, Paul, when he prays for his people, he doesn't pray that they'll be better evangelists or that they will avoid sin. He prays that they will know God better. He says, I pray that you, being rooted and firmly established in love, may be able to comprehend with all the saints what is the length and width and height and depth of God's love, and to know Christ's love that surpasses all knowledge, so that we may be filled with the fullness of God.
Right.
So that's how we fix these problems.
Well, the hardest thing to just put a period on what you're saying is that we tell people like to focus on love, but you can't focus on love because we don't know what love really is anymore. So that has to stop with it has to start with focusing on God, because focusing on God and learning about God's character and learning about who God is and why he gave us his son, that will teach us the root of the word love. Mm-hmm. And then we will realize we've been using it wrong. You'll realize you've been using it wrong all along. Mm-hmm. And you can fix that. And then you can practice Ephesians in such a way that you feel it just reverberate through your life. Mm-hmm. So I think that's good advice, huh?
Yeah, I mean, that's the solution to lukewarmness is walking in love and just reframing your focus on what's important, which is Christ.
Yeah.
And I know that like a lot of this can be construed as like, let me reword that. A lot of this can be taken as like, oh, well, this just sounds more general. I thought this was a youth ministry podcast. A lot of this starts when you're in high school, because you got to learn if you learn early on when you're in high school, when you're a youth age, like the kids who listen to this primarily, if you can teach yourself how to have that personal walk with God at home when you actually are with your family, then when you grow up and you move out and you get an apartment and you're on your own and you wake up in the morning off of your own accountability and you go to work off of your own accountability, you have to be able to return to go to church because you want to, and to go home and read your Bible because you love Jesus, not because your youth pastor told you to.
Amen. And if anybody is saying, like, I thought this was supposed to be a youth, about youth ministry, the Bible is the same for the babe, the youth, and the adult.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so we are taking the opportunity to teach a group of kids from 13 to 18 the Bible the way it was intended to be learned for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
We might bring the terms and the terminology down a little bit, but yeah. So the same thing we do in youth ministry is the same thing we do in recovery ministry, and it's the same thing we do in adult ministry. That's probably the biggest lesson. Now, we talk about like fun things and fundraisers and, different small things we do to help our kids understand difficult concepts, but nowhere in the Bible does it say Jesus talked to the 12-year-olds different than he talked to the 30-year-olds.
Mm-hmm. So I think that wraps up everything that we were talking about and what we wanted to talk about pretty well.
Yeah.
I want to just, some quick announcements. YEC is really close. In fact, I'm pretty sure, according to the schedule, this is I guess this will be coming out next week. And so that means that YEC will be only a month and a half away, which is crazy.
That is crazy.
Well, what's crazy is I'm starting a 7-week series. Starting a 7-week series starting on Wednesday.
So it'll wrap up.
And that ends the week of YEC. Mm-hmm. We're actually going to be talking about the Sermon on the Mount, so that's going to be awesome. Yes, so our YEC shirts are I'm going to be ordering it soon. I'm giving those, because people are asking, we give out the YEC shirts on the day of YEC. I'm not giving it to y'all before YEC because it doesn't make sense.
Right.
But after YEC is over, I'm gonna start selling the shirts. If anybody wants more,
Extra.
give them their kids, give them to their family and everything.
Okay.
Let me see. Now that you're back, we're gonna get back on full force with our posts and everything. And I think I'm ready to see this ministry, this media program grow a little bit.
Yeah.
As you can see, we found an angle we like. So.
Yeah, I think up, down, but yeah.
I think we're gonna stay up here. Yeah.
Well, we didn't miss a whole lot. We still had Tuesdays, and I think we missed one Motivation Monday. So even, it was a rough 2 weeks. It wasn't like we just decided not to do it. It's been a rough couple of weeks, but I think coming back, we haven't sat down and done this for a few weeks, and I still feel like it's.
I feel like we have so much more to talk about too.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I think that pretty much wraps it up. I want to know, Nikki, do you have any words of wisdom for everybody?
Just like always, love Jesus and make really good choices.
Don't trust monkeys in a poker game.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, okay. Also, as far as socks, today I'm wearing my Scrooge McDuck socks. Thank you to Brother Reggie Williams, who gifted these to me because he said, and I quote, "I don't like cartoon socks." And so I said, give them to me. I should get a sock cam right here.
Oh, just on your feet.
Just on my feet right here, so
we
y'all can see it. Yeah. Maybe we can have.
We'll just take a snapshot and post it at the end.
You know what would be awesome? If a sock company could sponsor us. Some kind of Christian sock company.
Do they have a Christian sock company?
They could.
New Orleans has a major sock company.
Go to Mardell. They sell socks over there. So.
All right, you heard it. We want Jesus socks.
All right. Well, I think that'll pretty much wrap things up. So stay tuned for more content that'll be coming up soon. But anyways, it was good to talk to you guys. Later.
Bye, guys.